Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast. My name is Mark Aylward, and I'm here as always with my good friend, colleague, and co-host, Jim Gurulé. And just to remind people that might have listened to the last episode, this is the second of a three-episode series to begin 2026, season five. And we're doing it this way because we wanted to reflect back on the development of the podcast and our framework, the wheel of life, and the five areas of life, and where it came from and how we use it. And in this episode, Jim's gonna kind of interview me about my experience and background and the work that I do now, which I'm going to eventually offer to any listeners here, as is Jim, for services, advisory services, consulting services. And we'll get into what that might look like. So this episode's about me. The last episode was about us and the framework. And next week I'll be interviewing Jim. And that should give everybody a pretty good understanding. If you want to take us up on any of the services that we're going to be offering, you'll have the ability to say, oh, I think I'd lean towards Jim, or I think I'd lean towards Mark. And we're not concerned either way. We want you to get the best and most suitable help that you can get from us collectively as individuals. So I think today, Jim, what we talked about was we're going to spend a couple minutes asking me about my thoughts about each of the five areas, but we're going to give me a little bit more time on the fifth area of profession, because that's kind of my area of expertise and experience. But yeah, before I start talking, anything to add to that, Jim, or would you like to just begin interviewing me?
The only I'd like to add, Mark, is what we discussed in the pregame, and that is how important frameworks are, and that the inception of the Imperfect Men's Club podcast was, nearly 5 years ago, and it was on a whiteboard with these different areas of our life that we end up putting together, and that's, we use it every single week, and it turns out that we use it every single day in our
Hmm.
interactions. So it's become a certain part of our life. It's not that this wasn't happening before. We just have created a structure, a framework, that's where I'd like to start. Was we'll cover yours, but also some other frameworks that you maybe just give us a heads up of how you use these frameworks in everything you do. Um, beyond just everyday life. So
Yeah, and Jim, the other thing that strikes me as worth mentioning is, without getting too personal, you and I met when you were seeking some help with a challenge you were having, and I was in a position that I'm no longer in, of consulting with an organization that offered the kind of help that you were looking for,
Mhm.
and we became fast friends. But subsequently, you've acted as kind of an advisor for me over the years, and I've acted as kind of an advisor for you. So, for anybody out there contemplating, our ability to do this, there's decades of experience, and we flushed them all out together, and we've kind of acted as each other's agents over the years, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, we'll talk more about mine next week, but let's get right to it. It's the science, right? That's the difference. What we're talking about is not this hocus pocus kind of crazy stuff. This is science and how the human brain functions. So why don't we just start off with just a very short, understanding of what that is, Mark? And because I think it is kind of the basis, right, of everything. The work that you do is based on these principles of how the human brain functions, and then we'll get
Yeah,
into taking you through the wheel.
yeah, I think the most compelling science that I was introduced to years ago, and have subsequently done a lot of research in, and actually practice some of the techniques and tools to do this. But to boil it down, 95% of what we do, say, and think, we do on a subconscious level. So we're only playing in the real world from an awareness standpoint with 5% of our brain.
Mhm.
And the next step in that logic is, if that is accepted as true, and it's proven to be the case with many years of testing and documentation and research by people that know a lot more about this shit than I do,
Mhm.
is that means that we're driven by things we're not aware of. And what are those things? Those are things that we developed as beliefs over long periods of time, beginning in our very young childhood. And so we're driven by things that are no longer necessarily true, or certainly not happening in the moment, but we're experiencing them as if they are happening in the moment. And what many people in the world of science around this concept of the subconscious versus the conscious and the way the brain works have done is developed how do we influence the subconscious? Well, we do that with visual imagery and things like words and phrases, which some people call mantras, some people call prayers, and then also the breath work involved. So the things that can impact the subconscious, not that this is everything that I do as a service delivery mechanism or you do, but it's the backbone of it. It's right. Well, we're gonna get into when we start helping people a series of very, very deep and broad questions about tell me what that looks like. You
Mhm.
know, what's limiting you? What's in your way? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? So it's definitely based on science, but it's
Mhm.
also this notion of we're not aware of most of what we do, which I
Yeah.
think is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, you set us up nicely for the first talking about the flywheel. We refer to it a couple other ways, or the wheel of life, the flywheel. But yeah, think of it as a circle, and in the center is self. And I think we're up to about 40 different self hyphen, but you use the word self-belief. And then, like you said, whether it's conscious or subconscious, this is always going on. But we always start with self-awareness because if you don't have self-awareness, the self-belief comes after that. That's who we become. But in the center of all that is self. And every episode, I think for the last year or so, we always start off with self-awareness because that's probably the hardest part. You have to be self-aware this is going on. And
Hmm.
as you said, our the ways our brains function is subconscious. It's events that happen when we were 10 years old or
Hmm.
our childhood that keep coming back. So it's being self-aware. This is happening to everybody. There's nothing wrong with this, right? We call it the Imperfect Men's Club. The imperfection is the perfection.
Hmm.
This could not be a better example of the imperfection is the perfection. It sounds like it's a crazy person, but every human being functions this way. But the difference between next level performance in life and everything is being self-aware that this is going on.
Hmm.
So you set me up nice, and I'm going to just take you through the flywheel, starting off with the first one. Again, no particular order, but the first one is the relationship that we have with money, which
Hmm.
is interesting because it was the last one we added, kind of in the as a second thought, and it turns out that money is a huge driver of everything we do, and
Hmm.
it's money's emotional. And then within the money, we created a subcategory of abundance, and within the abundance is another subcategory of typically that you're optimistic about money, you're maybe more generous, but the other side of the relationship that we have with money is scarcity. And often that's pessimistic and you're fearful that's not enough, which eventually will connect that these all connect and it's all about alignment. And that comes from our childhood and kind of other events. But yeah, Mark, let's start off with your relationship with money.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. I can come at it from a few angles. I spent decades as a recruiter and the owner of recruiting firms, so I talked to everybody that I came in contact with about money, how much you
Yeah.
make, how much you're going to pay for this guy, and so people's self-worth was really wrapped up in money, and I was right next to it for
Mm,
decades. And
absolutely.
so the other interesting observation is I grew up with two parents that were born in the Depression.
Mm,
So I grew up in an environment where there was a scarcity mindset about money. In
mhm.
my 30s, I became a multimillionaire, and then in my 40s and 50s, I lost all my money in a contentious divorce. So I've got a lot more experience with the ups and downs of money than I'd care to have, but I think it's very helpful when I start to help people. So
Mhm.
I've seen it from my own lived experience, this roller coaster, scarcity, massive abundance, and scarcity again, back on
Mhm.
the road to abundance. So I've lived that experience, but I also had all of those observations, thousands of them over decades, talking to people about one of the most important decisions they make, which is how much money are you going to make in this
Yeah,
transaction we're
yeah,
talking about?
yeah. I never realized that the insight, like when you're what you've done your entire life, professional life, is deal with somebody probably at their lowest point or highest point, whatever it is, their value to the world. So this is interesting that we start off with that because the alignment always, everything's connected, right? It's all
Yeah.
about a connection. So, but this also sets up the next one because you mentioned your relationship with what we refer to it as others or people. And we specifically created again subcategories. And so subcategory, uh, we created one for male, and that could include obviously your father, your uh, brothers, uncles, whatever it is. That's as that's our relationship with the world. Also, your family. That's your mother, your sisters, your aunts, whatever that may be, your girlfriend, your wife, and I got them mixed up. I was going to say with the male, I guess 2026. So, somehow maybe I went to the trans. I guess you could be anything you want these days. So,
Yeah. The
the
gender
the
discussion.
genders, but no, then we created the second subcategory was female because that's a very different relationship that we have with our mothers, our wives, our girlfriends, our daughters. And yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that because you mentioned going through a very difficult time in your life, but also, like you said, something that will change you forever when you go through the financial impact that that had on you. And again, I so much appreciate you talking about this because divorce is something that unless you've experienced it, I haven't experienced that. Is a very emotional
Yeah, I won.
experience and part of your life. But
I've been told I won the trophy for the worst, but the caveat is I never asked for the trophy. I wasn't looking for a trophy. But
yeah.
no, what makes me think about in terms of relationships and other people. Again, my profession got me deeply involved in other people's relationships because it was always part of the decision process. You always
Mhm.
kind of communicated with your spouse or your significant other or whatever. But I knew both of my grandmothers pretty well, which
Mhm.
I feel fortunate about. I won't go into detail, but they were
Mhm.
very interesting and culturally and otherwise intellectually. But I communicated with them pretty regularly and pretty deeply. My
Mhm.
mom and I, she wasn't a very intimate person. She took her own life not too long ago, so
Yeah, you shared that.
there
Wow.
was that. I've got two daughters.
Mhm.
My ex-wife is a psychology 101 textbook in all kinds of maladies of the mind, and I'll
Is
leave that at.
narcissism one of those?
Yeah, but we don't have enough time to go into that right now. But anyway, I have two daughters that are both very successful,
Yeah.
very intelligent, very capable, competent, funny,
Mhm.
and because I raised them essentially on my own when I got sole
Mhm.
custody, they taught me a lot about listening, a lot about a
Mhm.
female perspective on things, and they're also raised at a time where there's a lot of confusion in that space about what a man and what a
Mhm.
woman is. And I also have been dating for almost 7 years now, a wonderful woman who was born the same year I was. So we
Mhm.
grew up with a lot of the same traditional values, which has
Mhm.
been very helpful. And so I have a lot of perspective on that. And I'm very close to my dad, very close to my older brother, but I don't talk to my younger brother or my younger sister.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of different areas of looking at how relationships work and what's required. And relationships are a big deal. The final comment I'll make on that is I believe strongly that men and women are very different, and I
Mhm.
also believe very strongly that that is an advantage to both men and women if we celebrate those differences instead of trying to stamp them out, right?
Mhm.
And I can get into any detail that anybody wants to on that topic, but we're done for now on that one.
Yeah, well, it also sets it up nicely for the next one, which is our worldview. And we have two categories, subcategories. One, we start off with our childhood, and just as you referred to, right, a lot of our subconscious is based on our childhood. And when I say childhood, I'm even I think, or we, it's not me, we're specific in terms of the time period.
Hmm.
That has a lot to do with it, and the place, the time and the place.
Yep.
So it's and then also that's our heritage. Like in your case, again, Catholic Italian, or I'm Catholic Italian, you're Catholic Irish.
Yep.
Um, it's not that I live that life every day, but it is an important part of who we are. It's our identity, and it
Yep.
is it's formed in our childhood, and then our religion. And again, I value that you maintain that. It's an important part of who you are, and your relationship with the world is in your religion. So, yeah, tell me a little bit about your childhood, and then I'll move on to the next one, which
Yeah, I think it's all those things. I think we start getting shaped when we're very young. Some people argue in the womb, you know. That's why some people sing and talk to their babies when they're pregnant. But and I buy that. I think that's probably true. But I think about where I grew up outside of Boston in 1961 is when I was born, and there was, you know, the things that were going on at the time politically, militarily, economically, all shaped who I became. Where my parents were from, my dad grew up very poor, as did my mom. He grew up in the city of Boston. She grew up on
Mhm.
a farm in Iowa. And and then, you know, I moved, I went to the University of Notre Dame. So my
Mhm.
college years were spent in Indiana, and I worked in Chicago. So I was a Midwest guy for 7. And I've been in Florida for 30 plus years now,
Mhm.
and very glad to be living in Florida right now. But my politics are pretty conservative. I like to
Yeah, let's
say,
let's let's move on to that. The next one is our ideology, and we created two subcategories. We changed the label a little bit just so the triggers don't go off. But yeah, I think our ideology is often our politics, and that's the red team and the blue team. And especially this is back to being self-aware. Our worldview is something that every day we're interacting with the world, and we've talked about this too. About as later on in our lives, well, we have we become who we are, but also even some of our friends that have a different ideology or worldview in terms of politics, those relationships change over time. But
yeah, yeah.
it's our identity, it's who we are, and yeah, tell us a little bit about ideology and just go straight right into even the politics of every day and your worldview.
Yeah, you know, I again back to my profession and how it relates to this is I've been talking to people about how they view the world for a long, long time, and but I don't really talk unless it's with somebody like you or, you know, one of my brothers about politics from the standpoint of political viewpoint. I talk about things in terms of, does this make sense to me?
Yeah.
Right? Does this make sense to me? And there are, if it doesn't make sense to me, then I question it. And I'm also very interested in something I think we've lost and it seems to be coming back is the ability to talk in a civil manner with someone with whom we disagree. And so I never really brought politics into my work, but I also could say to you, I think most people will understand pretty quickly which way I lean. But I don't get emotional about that. I try to be pretty pragmatic, and I always look to the common sense. I guess that hooks back to self-awareness
Mhm.
to some degree. But
Yeah.
um,
If
yeah,
I asked you if we were on the red team or the blue team, would you be willing to share that on?
oh yeah, I'm a bright red guy all day long. Yeah, no, and I don't apologize for that, you know.
No, no, that's why
No, I know
I
you're
asked
just
you. It's
kidding,
that
but
you,
for
yeah,
anybody that might be listening or
yeah,
contemplating dealing with me, I don't care what anybody believes
yeah,
politically, unless
yeah,
I'm talking to them about politics, and I don't bring up politics
yeah,
when I don't know yet who I'm talking to,
yeah,
because I think that's
yeah.
unwise, you know.
It's part of who we are. It's being self-aware
Absolutely, absolutely.
that's our ideology, our worldview. So, and let's move on to the next one, which is we changed the names a couple of times on this one, but right now it's called the well-being. I think at one point we had it at health, and
Yep.
then we created our subcategories is our physical health, which is of course our fitness, our nutrition. That's the everyday well-being of your physical health. And then we created the second category was mental health well-being,
Hmm.
which is couldn't be more of of an, it's always been an issue, but in terms of what our podcast is, even what you do when you work with clients and how important the mental health. And then we just the subcategories of that is our that's emotional and our cognitive abilities, because cognitive abilities are always part of the mental health, especially
Hmm.
as we age. But
Hmm.
yeah, why don't we start off with just a quick review about your physical, your thoughts about well-being and physical, and then we'll move on to the mental, because I know that's an area that you know a lot about. I think
Yeah,
maybe more than anybody in
they're
relationship
both
to profession. Yeah.
a lot of lived experience in both categories. I've done a lot of work in my life on myself with regard to my emotional well-being and my mental well-being, and a lot of research, a lot of guinea pig work. You know, before I talk to anyone else about it, I do it myself and see what kind of impact it has. So I do a lot of meditation, a lot of breath work. and a lot of visualization type exercises. A lot of that's to work on that subconscious stuff we
Mhm.
talked about earlier. But I was an athlete my whole life too, and I grew up with two parents who were athletes, and all of my siblings were athletes. So sports was a big part of our upbringing, and so nutrition and fitness right down. And I've always experimented. I used to be a guy who lifted a lot of weights and did more aggressive training, and now I do things like yoga and walk. And but I've had a lot of lived experience in both of those areas. I think they're both very important. I
Mhm.
would call myself a fit guy. I eat well. And I just try to be conscious of everything that touches my body or goes into my body, as well as the people that I spend time with, because I think that's the biggest impact on your
Mhm.
mental well-being. But yeah, I think it's a very important category. I'm not a
Mhm.
fitness expert. I'm not a nutrition coach. I'm
Yeah.
not licensed in any of this stuff.
Yeah, we'll
But
just
I,
touch on the mental side of it, and then we'll move on to the final one, which I really want to drill down deep into. But yeah, when you think of well-being and you talk about mental health, what are your overall thoughts about that, especially for guys in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s?
the guys that I focus on now, because I think what I do can help almost everybody, but you can't message everybody and you got to focus on somebody to be impactful. But I think the guys that I deal with now, unfortunately, many of them have just given up on their physical health, and the mental well-being. We're overprescribed, from the number of prescription advertisements on the television to the number of prescription drugs that people are taking now. I know guys my age or even younger that are on 8, 9, 10 different prescriptions, right?
Mhm.
Some of them are for mental well-being and some of them are for physical maladies, but I can't imagine that's good for anybody. And,
Mhm.
my advice, if anyone were to ask me for advice, I would say almost without exception, and there are cases that are the exceptions, you can get off prescription drugs and you can get rid of most of your maladies, physical and emotional, with lifestyle, with changes in
Mhm.
behavior and consumption. And that's another big topic, and it's a one I love to talk about, but I don't push myself on people.
Mhm.
But I am willing to talk about it when someone wants to talk about it. Like, Mark, what do you do for this? What do you do for that?
Right.
It's
But
fun.
again, the assumption is that you factor all this in when you start to work with your clients, the people that you work with. So that moves us right into the final one, number five, which is profession. I'm going to ask you a little bit about, your background, but also get into some frameworks that you've created, that you've developed, over the last several decades. And of course, using the five areas that were talked about as a starting place, knowing that that's going on. But yeah, tell us a little bit about your profession, and oh, by the way, we also created the subcategories of this, and this is, I think, I value this all the time, especially when you're speaking to somebody, because I have some friends that are say former police officers or government jobs. So we have two categories. We have employee, and we have, and within being in your profession, which as a man is our self identity. We created working for a government agency. Like, again, it could be a fireman, police officer. My father worked for the state of California for 35 years. And then, or working for a company, which is corporate America. And we all know that's a whole different person compared to the other category, which we identified as employment. And that, again, self-employment could be gig working, it could be entrepreneurship, it could be a lot of different things. But often, in this day and age, it's freelancing, different things. But share with us what you're doing now, and even well, I'm particularly interested in these frameworks and that you've created that are very unique to people or men particularly, that what are self-aware that they want to go to a different place, or they're having a hard time um, understanding how all this works together. But yeah, if you could share your background about your profession and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think for anybody, and I think the audience that I'm speaking to now is twofold. It's everybody that might be interested in these topics, and then secondarily, and perhaps more importantly, anyone contemplating engaging me for whatever services I might offer. And I kind of want to cover this in the context of that. I spent, like I said, decades, three plus, in the career space, in the staffing space, and most of that was spent as an owner operator. So I built and sold two companies in that space, multi-million dollar companies. So that was my whole life, professional life spent helping people making one of the biggest decisions that people have to make is what am I going to do for a living next?
Mhm.
A lot of times people are in a bind. They maybe got laid off, got fired, whatever. Sometimes they just didn't like what they were doing anymore. They didn't like the person they were working for. So a myriad of reasons why people want to change where they are right now. But as I've gotten older, and I had to raise my kids on my own, so I needed some flexibility. And I turned all that experience into coaching, and it's coaching currently men of almost any age, but probably middle life more than anything else that have hit a wall. And the walls are they're not few and far between when you become middle aged for men and women, but for men in particular, um, loss of a job, relationship problems, money problems, health problems, loss of a loved one, harsh stuff, hardship that we all go through. But when you're going through it, it often feels like you're the only one going through it because I was in it. I was in the shit for a while in this divorce. And it was, I also, during that time, I didn't find any resources to help me. There were a lot of resources for women, but there weren't many resources for men. So all of these things taking place in conjunction with one another, I wake up one day and say, I think this is what God wants me to do next. I think he wants me to take my experience, both my contentious personal experience and my pretty long professional experience, and say, bottle that and look for the men that need it and help them. And so that's why it's interesting that all these areas in our framework are there because I help people in all five of those areas, even though we begin in the so to speak funnel of that experience with profession. I've never been able to talk to any man about his professional success or situation without dipping into all of the other four areas.
Mhm.
It's partly because of the way I operate, high touch relationship, kind of transparent, self accountable type approach, but it's also because they're linked for everyone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's all about alignment and connectivity. And when we started the podcast together, I remember you sharing that. Hey, I'm doing this whether we talk about it or not. And
Yeah,
then we started to create this framework, and
yeah,
we've evolved. But yeah, something you said too, I think it's really important. You can hire somebody to talk to, but they're not going to understand all these other parts of your life and how they connect. So even if you had, say, a professional therapist, they're not going to get too much into profession, nor do you want to get in profession with that. So
no,
and again, as a man, it's very personal. Our
yep,
career is our self identity. It's our self worth. It has a lot to do with who we are. I think different more than women, right? Because
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So
that's the other thing, Jim, that's interesting, not to cut you off, but when I went looking for, okay, if I'm going to do this, who's my competition?
yeah.
Because that's what you do no matter what business you want to start. There was relationship coaches, there were dating
Hmm.
coaches, there were
Yep.
romance and sex therapist type people, but
Yep.
there was no one doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, there's
That
fitness coaches,
yeah,
there's
right. Yeah,
money coaches, but nobody would bring it all together into
not
one.
that I
And
could find, not that
yeah,
I could find.
and
And I think that to reflect on my experience, I got three kids, two girls and a boy, but my two girls, they didn't have a mom for years,
yeah,
formative years. And so I became the mom. And I've been
yeah,
told on more than one occasion that I have developed an empathy
yeah,
and an ability to listen and not be judgmental that a lot of guys that have all the other traits that I have
yeah.
don't have. And I don't know if that's true or not,
No, there's
but
no question. It's unique ability, but that's based on a perspective that, I didn't have that experience with raising our two children. I obviously, they had a mother, so it's very different, and I value that. But something and I know you're still, working on this. It's your life's work, but you've also created a framework that's unique to this process, and you refer to it as real. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how that works from beginning to end, the assessment? And I just think it's, like I said, it's just a phenomenal uh,
well, I
process.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
I think that you've helped me a lot with this concept of frameworks over the years because I think that, people that have a real deep experience in a particular area lose sight of the fact that most other people don't know the things that they know.
Mhm.
And I've heard it called the curse of knowledge. And it's true. Without that guardrail, I would start people at step three or four and skip over steps one, two, or three because I was like,
Yeah.
everybody knows that. Well, they
Hmm.
don't. Not everybody
Yeah.
does. And that was an interesting discovery. But it's a structure. Frameworks are structure. They give things a name that you
Hmm.
can remember and associate with a particular thing or a
Hmm.
method. And it's structure, and there's an
Yep.
order to the structure. And REAL is an acronym. And
Hmm.
very fundamentally, because we don't have the time to go deep into it, that would be a session, I suppose,
Hmm.
is reflect, okay, evaluate, activate, and lead.
Yeah.
And it all begins back to the wheel. It all begins with a pretty deep period of self-reflection and
Hmm.
self-awareness, which is me just asking questions. Anybody who wants to come in and get the coaching is we sit down and talk about what's going on. What are the hardships? What are the
Hmm.
limitations? What are the circumstances? What would you like to change? What have you tried? Why hasn't it worked? All of these things. And people have to be ready because as I said to you a million times, these questions are simple, but the conversation is hard. And I
Hmm.
find most people don't do it ever. They never do this. They never stop their life and say, what's going on? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Um, Most of us wait for hardship, and you
Hmm.
don't have to wait for hardship, but it doesn't matter to me other than I would feel a little more sorry for you that you hit the hardship already. But most
Yeah.
people, even the people that hit hardship, most of those people don't seek help either. They try to figure it out on their own, or they just accept the circumstances as if there are no possibilities of doing anything else,
Yeah.
which can be a little bit sad. But
Yeah,
that's the
yeah. Just I'm just
framework.
going to come out because you use the word methodology, which is super important because, like you said, the framework is one thing, but you've developed a methodology that eventually has an output, a deliverable, and you do this on obviously with technology. This is a very powerful tool where this can transcripts, you have audios, you can capture all this in these different sessions, right?
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
allow you to refer back to that. It's just remarkable what we can do um, today versus say 5 or 10 years ago.
It is.
But
It's easier to package this stuff. I got series of workbooks and I've got videos and but the,
yeah.
the real impact, I think, and it's one of my challenges because you can't scale time for money. You
Mm.
only have so much time. But I'm looking to scale it. But most of the value is always going to come from a one-on-one customized approach by
Hmm.
me. And then, but I can set people off with very specific paths of this is what I want you to do between now and when we speak again. And I usually spend 3 hours with people over a period of maybe 4 to 6 weeks
Hmm.
because there's homework to do in between sessions with me. And
Yeah.
people typically come out with significant clarity, which is helpful for everyone, a renewed sense of confidence,
Yeah.
a renewed ability to influence others without being
Mhm.
manipulative, and a plan of
Mhm.
attack.
Yeah.
There's so you get the strategy and you get the tactics. And I've had
Yeah.
more than a handful of people tell me that I've changed their life, and I've had a few people tell me that I've saved their life. And so I take this stuff very seriously.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next one, again, I like that you start with reflection. Again, you can put a self in front of it, right? Self-reflection. So you use the Imperfect Men's Club framework as a starting point, and
Hmm.
that's what the self-reflection is, right? Or reflection for the R. So let's move on to the next one, which is evaluate, because once you self-reflect, now you have to do an evaluation of what you're going to do with all this information. Tell us a little bit about that process or that part of the process.
Yeah, it ties back into one of your favorite words, which is alignment. Like
Mhm.
evaluation, the word
Yeah.
evaluate has the word value in it, right? So it's
Hmm.
like that's what we talk about is kind of we begin the process of okay, we got a shitload of information about what's
Hmm.
going on, and I got a bunch of ideas, but I don't want
Hmm.
to flood you with all of them at once. Let's talk about what's important.
Hmm.
And as another exercise I don't think most people do ever, and that is, what are my values? I
Hmm.
mean, everyone might want to assume that we all have the same values, but we
Hmm.
don't.
Hmm.
Like punctuality is very important to me. I know
Hmm.
a lot of people that don't care about punctuality at all, right?
Hmm.
And things like that, the cost of something, the value of something. Are my actions and my words moving forward? Have we done the work that allows me to be able to say, or us to say, the actions in the plan that we've not yet gotten to, right, are going to align with the values. So there's a similar exercise about talking about values. What is that value? What does that mean to you?
Hmm.
Why is it important to you? And so I think it's critical that we live our lives in alignment with our values. Otherwise, we get
Mhm.
wacky, we get out of kilter, you know? And
Yeah.
so that's the process of talking about values and beginning of the process of attaching those values and aligning those values with our
Mhm.
actions and our words moving forward.
Yeah, no, great stuff. Like you said, get recording. So the next one is to activate because again, after you've evaluated, now you have to. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but yeah, you have to do something with that information, right? So what does activate mean?
It's basically just putting together an action plan.
Hmm.
Here's how we connect the self-reflection exercise with the value alignment
Hmm.
exercise. And now, based on those two in-depth conversations, then we're going to start putting a plan together. And the plan is it's twofold, like any business. There's a tactical component to it. Maybe you decided to adopt the breath work technique that I use. Maybe
Hmm.
it's and then there's strategies. I want to start
Hmm.
my own company, or
Hmm.
I want to do something completely different with the rest of my life, or
Hmm.
I'm contemplating getting out of the relationship that I'm in. Some of this stuff is big, strategic
Yeah.
stuff, and some of it's more like, okay, if you want to do that, here are the tactics that fall in line with getting you to that goal in the shortest period of time possible with the highest probability of success.
Yeah, yeah, Mark. I'm just gonna share something I mentioned. It's very related to what we're talking about. Just last week alone, two very good friends call me and have some ideas. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an innovator, but they wanted to share their ideas with me about maybe turning that into a business. And my answer is like there could be no better time in the world, and I mean ever, to start a business with you have this knowledge of decades of experience and perspective and life lived experiences, particularly with AI. So I can't wait to see what you're going to do with that. But like you said, I like the word activate because what you can do today with these technologies, and I know you're really using AI in everything you do to activate these talents and these skill sets that were just not possible or not practical to do on your own. You need a
Mhm.
staff or a company. So I'd like to talk a little about that before we move on to the next one, which is lead. But yeah, if you could just a brief about your AI and how you're using it in your business and how you think it can help, anybody or not anybody, but particularly men that are ready to go to the next place in their career and their life.
Yeah, I just think because I'm not an AI expert, but I am a contextual expert. Uh, I can get into the context of a conversation or what's going on very well because that's what you do when you're a recruiter,
Mm.
or what you should do.
But you use it every day, right?
I use it every day, and I think it's a great tool, unless you're a coder, unless you're a technical programmer,
Yeah,
and there are other uses that I'm not going to explore because they're beyond my
right.
scope of knowledge. But I use it to dig deep into research, and I
Hmm.
use it um, to perfect writing that I'm doing. I don't create content with it
Hmm.
because I don't think that's wise.
Hmm.
But when I have content, I usually run it past AI and say, challenge this concept. How would you say that
Hmm.
better? Question this logic. Can you tell me a little bit of show me some data
So
behind this
applications, but
premise?
you can help someone really get clear on how they could use it as well, right? In
I
different parts of their
definitely could
life.
do that. Yeah, I
Yeah.
definitely could do that. And
Yeah.
I think anybody, I don't care how old you are, if you're still breathing and you still want challenges and you want to learn new things, not using AI is just you're cheating yourself, you
Yeah.
know?
I refer to as amplified intelligence, not artificial intelligence. It
Yep.
amplifies things in a way that was just not possible before. So
Yeah, I
moving on
love
to
that.
the final one and is lead. So
Yeah, so the real acronym REAL, the last one's the L. I just have spent a ton of time in the leadership space as
mhm,
a leader myself and training other leaders and teaching people about leadership and dealing with leaders who were hiring people in large companies and small. And so I've got a real good look at leadership over the same 3 or 4 decades. And there's very little great leadership in the world. That's a fact.
mhm,
So my goal with the leadership is now that we've clarified all these things and we put a plan together and we've aligned you with your values in terms of your path forward, you're going to lead somebody. Everyone is at very least leading themselves, right? You can't lead anyone else until you're leading yourself effectively. But it doesn't matter. You could be a father, you're leading your children. You could be a
Mhm.
coach, you're leading your team. You could be a manager, you're leading your group. You could be a C-suite executive, you're leading the company. Or you could be an entrepreneur leading everyone you come in contact with, suppliers, vendors, people you outsource work to, or perhaps employees. So there really aren't too many men out there that couldn't benefit from some deep dives into leadership, in modeling behavior and communication and empathetic listening and influencing people without being manipulative. And there's so many concepts of leadership that are practical in real life that I just thought, well, I'm not going to let go of this client without getting into leadership, and because I think it benefits everybody, it benefits the world.
Mhm. Yeah, I know you've done some stuff with large companies. But give us kind of an idea of the type of companies you work with or individuals you work with before we'll wrap this up.
Yeah, it's going to be men and it's going to be middle-aged men, a broad range of ages there, but midlife, not complete rookies, although I love helping young people too. And there are certain people that are not interested in reevaluating things because they're done and they're just going to and try to, play some golf or, do whatever. So people that are interested in continuously living a challenged, interesting, learning life, but are also ready. I bump into guys a lot that are just like, yeah, I'm waiting for my CPAP machine and I'm just going to take these pills and I'm going to buy some fat clothes and just watch some TV for the rest of my life. That's not my guy, right? My
Hmm.
guy still has aspirations, but he's
Hmm.
beaten. He's something's beat him up. Something's beat him down. Um, Willing to listen, right? Willing to learn. Doesn't know everything, and competent. They
Hmm.
have to be competent. I want high aspiration guys as well,
Hmm.
and so that's a fairly narrow group. And I've
Hmm.
got a part of the process right now is I'm contemplating putting people through an assessment. But
Hmm. Hmm.
no matter what
But
happens, go
yeah,
ahead.
just come back to that for a second, because again, I know you work with career placement. That's say they're making a career move, but what's going on in the marketplace? I'd imagine there's new opportunities, there's new challenges. So is it just somebody looking for another job, or maybe somebody to kind of reinvent themselves or redo their brand to bring their services as a freelancer or consultant or whatever? But yeah, give us some ideas of what you see going on.
Well,
And
I'm thinking of the last two guys that I've coached, and won't name names, obviously, but we had significant health conversations. We had significant money conversations. We had significant professional conversations. Worldview came into play, and what's the one I'm missing? Oh, their career. I mean, I
yeah,
always talk with people about their career,
yeah, but
but
job
yeah, that
placement, like looking for a new
I don't
position.
find people jobs. I haven't done that in a long time.
I
So,
see.
but most everyone that comes to me that's looking for another job finds one very quickly after they finish with me.
I could see that. Yeah, it
Yeah.
helps them get their confidence uh, built up, especially if it's been knocked down, helps them get right. So when the interesting, so that prepares them
Well,
for that. Yeah.
here's the other thing, and this I'm not being snide. I'm not being sarcastic. Most people that look for work don't know how to look for work. They look for work
Hmm.
wrong, so they're
Yeah.
frustrated as hell because they're not doing the right things because
Yeah.
people aren't teaching them the right things.
Yeah.
They're manipulating them. And on the other side of the hiring process, most companies don't know how to hire people. They do a shitty
Hmm.
job of hiring. It takes way too long. The feedback, there's no feedback loop.
Hmm.
Neither party likes the process. So they get
Hmm.
frustrated. Companies settle for the wrong people and people settle for the wrong jobs. And then
Hmm.
you throw COVID in there and you got all this remote work going on. Everyone's an entrepreneur or has a side gig, a lot of moving parts. And most people don't know how to navigate that. I'm an
I
expert at
see.
that,
So you prepare them to be ready for that next step, and you do all the real important work ahead of time. So if they decide to go down that road, they're much more prepared than had they not gone through your process.
But they're also aligned with their own values. They've
Yeah.
they've gone through these exercises of who they are and what they
Yeah.
want to do and why they want to do it. And I think most people that are want to change a job just woke up and said, I'm getting out of here, or I
Yeah.
just got laid off. They just start throwing resumes into the world without any of this work, right?
Yeah.
And so that you're setting yourself up for failure and frustration when you do that. And you don't have to
Yeah.
pick me. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that. But having someone who's been in the trenches for decades,
Yeah.
there's not a whole
Yeah.
lot I haven't seen.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up right there. This is going on whether you're aware of it or not, right? These
Yeah.
5 areas of your life is always going on. And if you're really going ready to go to that next place, I think what you're providing is just remarkable in terms of
Yeah.
bringing it
Well,
all
you've been
together. So
been a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to the years to come with you, and you've been very helpful with me, Jim, and hopefully I have with you as well. And I think to remind everybody, if this stuff resonates with you, whether you hire one of us or not, when we start offering these services, go give us a star review and rate us on an Apple platform because I think this stuff can help a lot of different people in many, many different ways. And we're trying to get our message out there, and you guys can help with that. And then a reminder, this is episode 2 of a 3-episode series. And next week we're going to record in reverse. I'm going to guide and interview Jim through what he's done and where he's come from and what he's contemplating offering in terms of his service. And yeah, this was fun. I appreciate
it
it, Jim.
was all
Thank
right.
you.
Until next week.
See you.